Baby, you don't know what you do to me. Between me and you, I feel like chemistry. I won't let no one come and take your place. Cause the love you give, it can't be replaced. There's no one else can do like you do. That's why I'm mine. Spend my life with you. I wanna please you in any way I can. I wanna share.
So guys, welcome back. This video is mainly for the beginners, and these are the very easy steps you follow to create a corset. Now the first thing we're going to do is draft out a basic bodice for those of you that don't know how to, and from there we'll create the corset. And once we are done, we're going to create the back pattern for our corset top. Now let's go ahead and mark our measurements. Now get out your fabric or your pattern paper and mark along with me. The first thing I'll be marking on this point is my shoulder measurement. So I'll divide my shoulder by 2, my shoulder measurement by 2, and then I'll mark this down. From that point, I'll mark 1 inch down for the slope. So I'm just dropping the shoulder by 1 inch. Now I'm just going to go ahead and connect that slope to the neckline. The next step is to mark our armhole, and I will be dividing my round armhole by 2, and then I'll mark this down from the slope. My round armhole is 15. 15 divided by 2 gives you 7.5. So I'll be marking 7.5. Now I'm just going to confirm the measurement I mark on the shoulder. I'll confirm if I have that on my armhole line. And then once I saw that it wasn't matching, I'll just go ahead and adjust this to what I marked on the shoulder. Now I'm just going to connect the armhole points with a straight line to the slope. And then this is the shoulder in case you forgot, and this is the armhole. So I'll go ahead and rule an horizontal line on the armhole point, and this is where the curve for the armhole will be sitting. Now from the first point, which is the shoulder, I'll place my tape and go down by 10.5. that is my bust point. So you go ahead and find out what your bust point is from the measurement on the screen, and then mark this down on your pattern paper or your fabric. But I would advise you mark this on your pattern paper first or your interfacing before you go ahead and cut on your fabric. Now the next thing for me to mark is the under bust point. So I'll place the tape from the shoulder and I'll go down by 13.5. that is my under bust point. And the next point for me to mark is my waist point, and then I'm just going to place my tape the same way I marked other points. I'll place my tape from the shoulder and go down by I'll be using 17 inches as my waist point, so I'll mark 17 inches down. So now I'm just going to go ahead and mark my neck depth, and that is 7 inches. So I'll mark the neckline, that's the neck depth, and this is it. So now I have that sorted out, I'll go ahead and divide my round bust by 4, and then I'll mark this down on my armhole line because I just want to create the curve for the armhole. So once I'm done, I'll go ahead and mark the middle point on my armhole, and this is how you get the middle points. You divide what you have on your armhole by 2, and then you just go ahead and indicate the middle point. Now from the middle point, I'll go in by ½ an inch because this is the front pattern. That is why I'm going in by ½ an inch. So I'll go in by ½ an inch, and then from that ½ an inch, I'll go ahead and connect to the armhole and then to the slope with a curve. So this is how you basically create your armhole curve for the front pattern. Now if you don't know how to draft your basic bodice, this is it. Very simple. So you guys, let's go ahead and create the corset. The first thing we're going to be marking on our basic bodice is our apex. So apex is your nipple to nipple. So I'm going to go ahead and place the tape on one nipple to the other nipple, and I got 8 inches. Now go ahead and divide that 8 inches by 2, and then I got 4 inches. Now I'll be marking down 4 inches on my neckline, on my bust points, on my under bust points, and on my waist points. So basically I'm marking my apex on all points. Now connect the points with a straight line, because that is the line which I'll be indicating my dart, so I need the line to be visible. Now let's go ahead and mark the darts. The first dart we'll be marking is the dart on the waistline and also on the under bust, which is 1 inch, that's 2 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and mark 1 inch on each side of the apex line. So on the apex line, I'll go in by 1 inch and also out by 1 inch, making it 2 inches on the waistline, and then I'll do the same thing on my under bust, which make it in total of 2 inches on each of those points. Now that I'm done, I'll just go ahead and connect the point, the dart on the waist, or connect it to the under bust. Now moving to the neckline, I'll go ahead and mark my darts, and what I will do is towards the center front, I'll go in by 1/2 inch. That's towards my center front. Now towards my armhole, I'm going to mark 1.5 inch. Now I have that sorted out. On the bust point, I'll be marking 1 inch down and 1 inch up. So I'll mark 1 inch up and also 1 inch down. Make sure these lines and these points you're marking are visible, because you need to see them when you're connecting. So now I'll use my curve to connect the dart on the under bust to the bust, and then the one on the neckline to the bust. And then I'll move to the other side of the apex line where I have the other 1 inch on the under bust. I'll connect with my curve like this. I just realized that this curve is more beautiful, so I'll just go ahead and adjust this one. Okay, now I have 2 equal curves. I'll move this to the neckline. I'll connect those darts I marked already to the 1 inch I went up by on the bust with a curve also. And then I'll just go ahead and adjust. So now that I'm done with that, I'll move to the bust point. Towards the center front, I'm going to place my tape and go up by 1 inch. And then from that 1 inch, I'll be marking 1/2 inch in. Just mark 1/2 inch. I'll connect this. I'll connect this back to the bust line. I'll just use my ruler for this. I'll connect it back to the bust line like this. Now I'm just going to use my tape to mark 1/2 inch upwards from the under bust. So I'm just going up by 1/2 inch on the under bust. Now this is to eliminate any sharp edges that we're going to create on, like when we're creating the curve for the corset. This is going to help eliminate any sharp edges. So now that I have my 1/2 inch up from the under bust, I'll just go ahead and use my curve ruler to connect the 1/2 inch on the under bust to my bust line like this. I'm creating the curve already for the corset, and that is that. So I'll just go ahead and adjust. I don't know, this curve ruler, I think I'm using the wrong rulers, but this is all I have. This is all I can work with right now, so I'm just going to make do of what I have. So now I'll just go ahead and connect the 1/2 inch also from the bust line. I'll connect the 1/2 inch to the neckline like this. That's the chest line. Now we have one side of the cups ready, so I'll go ahead and also adjust. There is nothing wrong with you adjusting to the kind of cup you want to see on your corset. So I'll move to the other side of the pattern towards the armhole. I'll find the difference between my bust and my under bust, and I got 3 inches, and I'll be adding 1 inch to that. So now what I'll be marking from the apex line on the bust point towards the armhole, I'll mark 4 inches. So what I added to the difference I got from my bust point to my under bust was 3 inches, and then I went ahead to add 1 inch to that to get 4 inches. Now that I'm done marking the 4 inches on the bust line, I'll connect this to the 1/2 inch on the under bust, the one I came up by. I'll connect this with a curve. I'll go up by 1 inch from the bust line, that's towards the armhole. You can see where my tape is. I'll just go up by 1 inch. Then I'll go ahead and connect the 1 inch back to the bust line like this. Now I'm just going to go ahead and come down by 1/2 inch from the armhole line like this. I'm using like a different color of marker from the basic bodice we have because I want you guys to see the cup and understand the markings differently. I'll use my curve ruler to connect the neckline, that's the chest line, to the 1/2 inch I came down by on the armhole. Now I'm just going to go ahead and use a different color of marker to make the shape of the cup I want on my tube top. So go ahead and adjust now to the cup you want. So now that we are done, we're just going to go ahead and replace our darts and mark the round measurements. So I'll go ahead and drop this down. And once I'm done doing that, the next thing for me to do is I'll find the difference here on the armhole line, so I know how much I'm replacing. And what I got there was 1/2 and 1/4 inch. So I just marked it here, 1/2 and 1/4 inch. That is what I'm replacing on this line, and that goes for the bust line. So I'm just going to go ahead and rule a line like this to connect the armhole to the bust. So that is covered. Now the next point is the under bust. I'll go ahead and divide my under bust by 4, my round under bust by 4, and then I'll mark this. And remember, we marked 2 inches that, we took 2 inches that, so we have to replace that back, because if you don't do that, then you're going to be short on fabric. So after replacing, I'll connect the under bust back to the bust line like this. And then we move to the waist point. I'm going to divide my round waist by 4, and then also replace the darts, the 2 inches that I marked. So whenever you take your darts, make sure you place that back on your measurements so you don't run out of, like you don't mark into your measurement or you don't reduce your measurements. When you take your darts, go ahead and replace. So once I'm done, I'm just going to add 1 inch as my sewing allowance. I'm just going to mark that on all points. I'll mark that on the new armhole point, on the bust point, on the under bust point, and on the waist point. And then I'll just connect. So now this is it. I'm just going to go ahead and cut out my pattern. First of all, I'll be cutting out the yoke because I have no need for this. What I'm about to make is a tube top, a handless tube top. So I'm just going to cut the yoke out, and you guys, this is how I'll be cutting out my corset from this pattern. Before I do that, I'll label this. This is the center front, this is the side, and XX, because these 2 points has to meet when I'm sewing. So don't forget to label, so when you're sewing, you don't, connect 2 wrong points together. So go ahead and label out your pattern, and when you're cutting your fabric, you notch that point, those labeled out points, you notch them on your fabric. So this is how I'll be cutting my corset out. First of all, I cut out the center front, and this is it. And then these are my cups, so I'm just going to cut them out from the darts. You can see how the pattern is coming together when I cut. So take your time to cut your pattern, don't hurry, just take your time and do this. And then I'll be cutting out the darts from this cup carefully.
Everything you do makes me love everything about you. Your smile, your style, so fly, can't deny.
So you guys, this is the corset pattern, and let's cut the back pattern. Now to cut out my back pattern, I just have a fresh brown paper here. What I will do is bring in the front corset pattern, one of the pattern. I'm just going to use this to indicate my points. That's my bust point, my under bust point, and then the first point is the armhole, that's the chest line. So there is no need for me to indicate that because that is already the first point. So now I have my points ready. I did not need to start measuring and marking. I just used the front pattern to indicate my points on my new pattern paper. Now I'm just going to mark 1 inch for my zip allowance before I start marking my measurements. I'll mark out 1 inch this is for the zip allowance. So if you're going to insert zip on your corset, your tube top, you go ahead and mark out the zip allowance for the back. So this is for my zip. And now once I'm done with this, after the zip line, I'll go ahead and mark my nipples to nipples. That's my apex. And why we are marking the apex on the back pattern is because we are also going to take our darts. So that is why I'm going ahead to mark my apex. Now that I'm done, I'm just going to mark 1/2 inch on each side of the apex line. I'm starting from the waist point. I'm just going to mark 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here, and in total making it 1 inch. That is for my darts. And now I'll connect those 1/2 inch to my new armhole line. But before then, I'll come down by 1 inch from the armhole line. That's the chest line. I'll come down by 1 inch, and now I can connect the 1 inch to my darts like this. And the next thing I'm going to be doing is I'll just label this out so you guys know this is the bust point, this is the under bust, and this is the waist. Let me cut out the excess so you guys don't get confused. So this is basically what we're working with. Now that I am done, I'll go ahead and mark my round bust divided by 4. I'll mark down the measurements, and if there's any darts to be replaced, I'll replace that. And on the bust there is nothing to be replaced, so I'll go ahead and mark my round under bust divided by 4, and then I'll confirm how many inches I need to replace, and I found that it was 1/2 inch. I replaced that back. I'll connect the under bust to the bust line and then to my chest line like this. And now I'll just move to the waist. I'll divide my round waist by 4. I'll mark this down, and I'll go ahead and replace my 1 inch darts. And then I'll connect this back to the under bust. So now just go ahead and add 1 inch allowance, just as we did for the front pattern. I'll just add 1 inch allowance. Now once I'm done, I just want to drop my back by a few inches. Let me go ahead and cut out this pattern first. Let me cut out the excess that we don't need so you guys see what I'm talking about. So now I want to drop my back a little bit. So what I will do is, I'll place my tape from the armhole line, like from the chest point, which is the first point, and then I'll come down by 1 inch. I'll come down by 1 inch, and now I'll just go ahead and connect that 1 inch to the side of my chest line like this. That's my new armhole line. I'll connect the 1 inch like this. All I just did here was drop the back. If you don't want to drop this back, don't do that. Or you can decide to drop it lower than this. So if you want your back to be lower than this, you can go down by 1.5 2 inches. It is up to you. So now just go ahead and cut out the part I don't need on this pattern. And you guys, this is basically how you draft out your back pattern. And when I am sewing the back, I'll just go ahead and fold in my dart, or I can decide to cut it out before I sew. It is up to me. And you guys, stay tuned for the sewing version. Thank you for watching. I'll be seeing you guys on my next video, which is the sewing version.